Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Anamkara meditation program. With all my heart and with all my love, I welcome you to our program tonight. So glad you're joining us for the sort of a start of a new season of programs. So we took August off. So many people were away, and so now we start. It's almost like having an academic calendar. I think I've been in academia for so long. My idea is the year starts in September. So here we are, a new semester, a new year, whatever it might be. But one thing it is we're very near to the anniversary of the start of Anamkara, because we started right after the terrible events of 9/11 in 2001. And so we're just finishing our 23rd year of doing Anamkara programs, and soon beginning our 24th year. So, and glad you've been with us for so many years, joining in our programs and supporting them in the many ways that you do. Tonight, I wanted to talk a bit about, getting down to some of the sadhana issues, because really these Thursday night programs are about practice, sadhana, living as householders, as what we are. We live in the world. We don't live in a monastery. We don't live in an ashram. We don't live in a gompa. We live in the world, and we live enmeshed in family and work and relationships and all the things that make up this rich quality of our lives. And it's the place where we do sadhana. And so it takes an orientation, a shift in the mind, so that our sense of meditation practice and our sense of spiritual practice, sadhana practices, embraces everything about life, because they do. And especially this age, in the Eastern tradition known as Kali Yuga, the householder sadhana, living in the world, living the practices, living the truth, coming to know the infinite, coming to know the divine as what we are and what all is, and living that into the world. That's what's called upon in this age. Kali Yuga is known as a dark age, and because of the ignorance and the lack of dharma, the lack of people sort of, naturally, spontaneously living in congruence with their highest nature, meaning in congruence with the loving compassion, the wisdom, the patience, the kindness, that are qualities of what our highest nature is. And when we are in touch with that, we live it into the world. But if we're not in touch with that, then we just live the ordinary mind and its conditioned way of approaching life. That's what we live into the world, and that's what we look around and see, and why it looks like so many things are out of control. Because, well, the ordinary mind gets out of control. And groups of ordinary minds, well, they can go really out of control. So we're trying to reel in not only our own mind, but we're trying to reel in what's going on in culture and politics, so it reflects the highest, that this wisdom can be lived into the world, known in the world, experienced in everyday interactions. At a time when these things are particularly, they're under attack. And it often takes the form of being directed at women and the feminine, because the divine feminine, well, that's Lady Liberty. That's Lady Justice. That's Lady Sophia, Goddess Sophia, wisdom. And we see these things being denigrated on both that sublime archetypal level, but as well as what's happening to the treatment of women in their individual everyday existence, that they can feel so accosted and so disregarded and denigrated, and rights being challenged and removed. So this is a real time, a real crucible for us really getting grounded in the strength of Dharma, of knowing, of practicing, of living that. There's a power to that. It's called Dharma Shakti, the power of Dharma. It's what Gandhi was referring to when he said, in the end, it's what Dharma prevails. He was really talking about in the Mahabharata, where Lord Krishna is the embodiment of Dharma, and the Pandavas, the army led by Arjuna, chose him, meaning they chose Dharma and were victorious. Where there's Dharma, there's victory. That Dharma Shakti is what ensures victory over time. But we are the carriers of that. We are the carriers of that Dharma. So like in the Bhagavad Gita, it was Arjuna and his brothers and all of other family members who stood with Dharma so that it could prevail in the world. So this is a time where we, as practitioners, as ones who can embody that knowingly, consciously, and walk Dharma into the world, now we have the opportunity to really transform the world and bring it into greater congruence, greater accord with our highest nature, which is the highest nature of all beings. That's what we're called upon. And so our practices, whether it's mantra, meditation, karma yoga, all support that and embrace every aspect of our lives, literally from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep, and even through our sleep state. There are all times when we can approach it with a consciousness that helps to inform all of activities and transform them, uplift them, so that now they are part of an expression of our highest nature. They serve as portals into our highest nature. They serve as expressions of our highest nature into the world. We need this fully integrative approach to sadhana, to practice, to our lives. Because when the mind isn't consciously doing practice, well, we have to look at it. What's it doing? Where is it wandering off to? Because if it's not consciously engaged in practice, and it's not in a state of total freedom, the state of enlightenment, the state of yourself, that in between is where it gets into trouble. So that's why we have to keep reeling it in and training it. So when we look at practices, most of the practices are really aimed, they're aimed at the mind. They're aimed at training the mind, because that's what keeps drawing us into engaging in ways that aren't congruent with what our highest nature is. So great that we get together on these Thursday evenings twice a month to be able to more deeply contemplate these practices and how we're living them. And then do the practices, do chanting, do mantras, sit in the stillness and the silence together, because there's an energy and a power to that. And it's not about where you are, because the state that we enter, well, it envelops and subsumes all of reality. So when we're meditating together, we're entering a state that is a unified consciousness. It's a unified field. Part of what we're invited to do through the practices is, well, in a sense, it's helping us to realize what quantum physicists are talking about right now. That reality is really based on a field of consciousness. And the appearance of solidity is just that, it's an appearance. But this field of consciousness, that's the root nature of reality. Well, tonight I'm going to be talking a bit about the Shiva Sutras, and my favorite translation of that is by Jayadeva Singh. And the Shiva Sutras are an exquisite explication on both the highest reality, the highest truth, to the degree that it can be pointed at by words, because it cannot be spoken of. It can only be pointed at, and then you have to go beyond all the words into that state, into that reality. So we should never get confused that we're grasping it. The mind likes to grasp, but we can't grasp it, but we get a hint of where we're going and what to look for. So tonight I wanted to look at the third section of the Shiva Sutras. And from past discussions, you might remember, or from your own study of the Shiva Sutras, it's divided into three sections. The first section is on the most expansive and really the most subtle levels of teachings, because there it's really talking about what's the nature of the infinite. And so the first sutra of the first section is Chaitanya Atman. And it's saying that the self is consciousness. The universal infinite self is consciousness. But this consciousness isn't the consciousness of mind, what we might associate with, where you are now and your waking state awareness. No, no, no. That's limited eye awareness. That's limited consciousness. Shiva Sutras are talking about the pure eye consciousness. Swatantriya Shakti means unimpeded, unlimited, boundless power of consciousness. That is the nature of reality. Then when you go to the second section of the Shiva Sutras, that then begins to talk about what's also called Shaktupaya or Beta Abeta Upaya. Upaya, the word upaya means. And so it's talking about what's the means by which we come to know the infinite as our own self and all that is. And there, interesting, the first sutra there is Chitta Mantra. And there it's saying, well, the individual mind is of the throb of Shakti. It's a throb of mantra. So the individualized mind is still Shakti, but now instead of being the unimpeded infinitude of Shakti, awareness, being, consciousness, bliss, all of that, right? All the four immeasurables that the Buddha spoke about, all talking about the same thing, right? Now when we get down to where we've divorced ourselves from knowing the infinite, we're entering the field of the limited eye awareness, and we enter at the level of mind. And mind is still a throb of Shakti, like mantra, but now it's in a contracted, a limited form. That's why it's called Beta Abeta or Shaktupaya, because it's a means that is aimed at dealing with this underlying ignorance where we sort of know on a conceptual level we're the infinite, if we've studied that or maybe had an experience of that, but we're still very much identified with the mind and content of mind. Well, when we go to this third section, which in many ways is the most practical section of the Shiva Sutras, because it's the upaya that meets us where we are when we're just in everyday life and everyday mind. And so it's called anava upaya or beta upaya. Beta means separate. So it's aimed at giving us the means, the upayas, for dealing with the experience of being separate. In other words, duality, being caught in dualistic thinking, dualistic mind, what everybody would just call, well, that's everyday life. They don't have a reference point different than that. So that is reality. Because the yogis have a different reference point. And we come to know that through the practices. So here in the third section of the Shiva Sutras, now again, the first sutra, as the first sutra in the previous two sections, is going to dial us into, oh, what's this about? And so this first sutra, when we look at it, is the individual self is mind, right? So it's basically saying Atma Chittam, right? Atma. But here now it's saying Atma as limited. The limited I is this mind. So now it's going to take us a little bit further into looking at mind, because that's what we're always dealing with, right? When you sit to meditate, what are you dealing with? Oh, you're dealing with your mind. You're dealing with its perceptions of your body, perceptions of noise, all the sensory perceptions. Well, that makes up content in mind. Fantasies make up content of mind. Memories we retrieve, they make up, that's all mind. Fantasies about the future, positive or negative, anxious or, whatever. All mind, all mind. Everything running through the mind when you sit there. That's what we have to deal with. And our ordinary way of dealing with that is, well, we just identify with it. Oh, there's content. That's a thought. No, that's my thought. I'm thinking that. So we become the thinker, we become the thought, we become all this stuff. So that's what's binding us. It's like all these little ropes tied around us with every thought. Every thought, if you look at it, has a limited eye awareness associated with it, a little me that goes with that. So we look at that. So when it's saying that, this Atma Chittam, and it's then starts saying the individual self is mind, and it's constituted by buddhi, aham, and manas. So it starts to differentiate so that when we say mind, well, what are we talking about? Well, the yogis talked about mind and said, well, we can start as you're just sitting there. If you're sitting in meditation, one practice is witnessing, just watching what's moving through this inner field of consciousness. You could do it eyes open too. But you're just watching the content, which is different than just becoming identified with it. You're watching it. So the yogis, in watching it, began to differentiate, just like if you're looking at a wall and you start to see details that weren't apparent when you first started watching, or looking at the wall, but now you can see, oh, there's a little speck, there's a little crack, there's this and that. Things differentiate when you're studying it, you're looking at it. So you look at the mind. So the yogis are looking at the mind, going, what is this? How could we understand this? And so when they're talking about these three qualities of buddhi, the manas, or aham and manas, rather, aham is what Patanjali called ahamkara. Aham means that aspect of mind that creates a little I. Ahamkara literally means little I maker. So one part of the mind is this thing that makes an I, a me, out of all the little pieces running by. What's running by? How does it notice what's running by? Oh, well, that's buddhi. So buddhi is awareness that just notes what is. And so, in fact, that's why Buddha focused on buddhi and practicing mindfulness, because also when we look at these three aspects of what we would normally call mind, the buddhi, the aham, and manas, they also correspond in Eastern traditions to the three gunas, these three qualities that make up existence. And sattva guna is the balanced, even point. So a lot of yogic practices, whether it's breathing work and pranayama, mindfulness, mantra, these steady posture, these all promote, cultivate, develop sattva guna, to become more sattvic. To become more sattvic means, you become not only just balanced, become free more from the aham and the manas, right? These two other qualities. And because they're considered the manas, which is just the mind thinking. It's just producing all this content, right? So manas, as an aspect of chittam, of mind, manas is rajasic. Rajasic is like agitated. And you can see that's the mind, right? It's going, and sometimes it's really rajasic, and sometimes it's less rajasic. But all that movement is what is being referred to when it's saying, oh, manas, that's of the quality of rajaguna, this active, agitated kind of quality of energy. Aham, the I maker, well, it's considered tamasic, kind of stilling, quieting in a jud, sort of unconscious, leaden kind of way. So cultivating buddhi is seen as the way to transform these aspects of mind that may either agitate us or get us really bogged down. I mean, if we're really caught up in our I awareness, in our ego mind, we become sort of leaden. It's the consciousness is very limited because it's limited to just its notion of a little tiny I. Even though that I might be agitated because it's got a lot of manas running through it, together it's just tamaguna and rajaguna sort of playing with each other. Buddhi, if we cultivate that, is trying to show us a path through that to become more stable, less reactive, because it's the nature of manas and aham, the ego I, to be reactive. So one of the things that the practices aim at is empowering us to get free of reactivity, right? So the reactive mind is part of what we're trying to get free of. And by cultivating buddhi, that ability to simply perceive, to come back to just the bare awareness. It's just isness. It's coming to see what simply is already starting to quiet the mind. And in so doing, we're starting to clear that field of awareness so that we begin to be able to see that field of awareness. Because that expansiveness of awareness, of being, of pure being, of Swatantriya Shakti, of Chaitanya, Atma, of that pure consciousness, it never left. It's always present. It's right here, right now, fully present, fully in the state that we would call meditation, that state of pure knowing. The ordinary mind isn't accessing, can't access that, because it's looking at all the content of mind and identifying with it, because all the content comes up, and immediately that reaction of that's me or not me, that's aham, that's the ahamkara, that's it either makes it says, oh, that's me, oh no, that's not me, right? That's going on all the time. So you can see that by doing the practices, we're starting to sort of calm all that down so we can simply be present with what is. And then, as that field starts to clear, consciousness itself is present. Consciousness itself, in its fullest expansiveness, is fully present. And it illumines all that is. But if we're so identified with content of mind, we're not seeing what that full luminous quality of awareness is, that's even illuminating the content of mind itself. Without the luminous awareness, we would not even perceive a thought, a feeling, a sensation, nothing. Everything, all of our reality, limited or not, rests on the infinitude of consciousness itself. So when we're going about our everyday life and doing, what we have to do in the world, well, we're adding to it to transform it from a set of practices, ordinary worldly practices, that would more deeply enmesh us and bind us karmically and through identification with everything that we're engaged in. We're adding the wisdom of, oh, I can watch. I can be a witness. I can watch my body and mind perform their duties. I can support that by keeping mantra going. Remember, mantra is a pure thought form, a pure emanation of the infinite. The root quality, the root consciousness of mantra, of maha mantras, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Kali Ma, Hamsa, Om Taritam Soha. The mantras have this root quality of aham, I am. I am the infinite, not the little mind going, oh, I'm just this person sitting here in just this time and space, disconnected from everything else. That's the mantra of the ordinary mind. That's what dominates your awareness. So that's what we have to shift out of. We've been practicing that mantra, that awareness, that contracted sense of being for lifetimes. So it's a mode of being and a habit of mind that is profoundly ingrained. So that's why we can't just go like that and say, oh, I'm just going to switch that. It takes, so the yogis say, it takes lifetimes. We have to be prepared to do it for lifetimes. But the more we're engaged in it, the more Shakti itself, because it's Shakti really in the end that dissolves that. And Shakti can dissolve that. Can dissolve it maybe for a moment. We're in meditation or we're watching a beautiful sunset or with a loved one or whatever it might be. And we just have this sense of expansiveness of the presence of the divine as all one and all being and all of what we are. That's the veil being taken away. That's grace. See, so grace can transform things in an instant. The mind can't. It doesn't have that power. Now what happens? or the mind, because it's so habitually trained to identify with the next thought, the next feeling, the next sensation, a memory that comes up, oh, that conversation I had with that person that was annoying, oh, I'm looking forward to this wonderful blah, blah, blah. All that floods back in, and that sublime experience is once again covered by manas and aham, by that limited eye awareness and all the agitation, rajasic qualities of the mind. So, in order to combat that, in order to counter the effects of that, this is why we have to practice steady awareness. We have to practice the steady repetition. Steady means as much as possible. Because again, if the mind isn't practicing being aligned with, attuned, seeking, looking towards the infinitude of being within our own self, if it's not engaged in that, even in the midst of everyday activity on some level, maybe tucked away in the back, but it's still there informing us, then it's whole scale involved in limited eye awareness, agitation of mind, reactivity, conditioned reactivity, on, and all that goes with that. So that's why, if we really want to come to know the absolute fullness of being, being that is already there, you're not creating that. That's not the task that's given to the mind. The mind is given the task of become quieter and quieter by coming to rest. First, in this awareness that is just watching. The little mirror of the infinite witness, the little witness is buddhi. So we see these corresponding qualities. Buddhi is like the limited witness. It's just there saying, oh, there's this, then there's that, there's a thought, there's a feeling, there's a sensation. The thought, the feeling, sensations, all that stuff being generated by manas. Then ahamkara comes along and goes, that's not just a thought, that's my thought, that's me. We're talking about me here. Right? So buddhi, though, is just noting it. So Buddha was that awakened buddhi. Awakened buddhi, oh, that's the infinite one. That's the boundless one. That's why Buddha then talked about, oh, what's the quality of the infinitude of being? Being a Buddha, being fully awake to the splendor of what we are, what every being is, what all that we encounter is. Awake to that, awake to that. That's why we took birth. That's why we're here. And to walk that into the world, because the root quality of that is love. The love that embraces all. It doesn't see a difference. It doesn't see the little I am that's different than you. Because when the manas and the aham get together, they also create otherness. Everything else is other to that. The awakened aham, aham, aham. That's all. That's all. You embrace all as your own self. You love all as your own self. How can you harm another? How can you destroy the planet? How can you destroy the environment? How can you denigrate anybody? All those terrible things that are going on in the world arise out of this root ignorance. So we want to cut the very root. We want to destroy the root so that we live in that quality of awareness that is our true nature. That we can bring the light of that into the world and say, there's a whole other way of looking at this reality. Because people caught in the darkness of that ignorance can't even see what the other possibilities are. And this is why the yogis, the sages, the saints have been saying this over and over and over for thousands of years across numerous traditions. No one tradition, no one teacher, no one anything owns that. It's the nature of our pure being that unites all in itself. That's what we're coming home to. That's what we're doing the practices. That's why we study something like the Shiva Sutras. Because if the mind is studying this, then it's engaging in the kind of knowledge and wisdom that'll help transform it. So the practices of contemplation, the practices of study, these are part of it as well. So when we're incorporating all of that, now our life becomes this sublime set of practices. It's a fluid practice. It begins with their eyes opening in the morning. What are they going to open to? Let them open. Let them open to the vision of God. It's the ahamkara that would automatically come up and go, oh, that's a ceiling, that's not me. Yes, it's going to know that no matter what. But what's absent is knowing that I'm all of this, and I'm going to be encountering countless, infinite forms of my own divine self throughout the day, glorious as they are. So our practices start the day, carry us through the day, end the day. If we wake up in the middle of the night, we can wake up with the mind still supported by mantra. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. We drown the ignorance of the mind in the nectar of mantra. So we can live the truth every moment, all times, all places. Because the truth is there. The divine is there. All times, all places. So we're going to chant the mantra Om Namah Shivaya now for a few minutes, and then just sit in the stillness. Just sit in the stillness that is your own nature. Sit in the stillness so that you can both see the mind. We're not offended by the mind. The mind is a speck in the boundless field of consciousness. The mind is a tiny atom, and we see it. But we also are seeing the infinitude, the field of awareness that extends beyond imagining. The universe and all its galaxies are held in that field of awareness. That's how expansive it is. That's what we're invited to know. So we'll chant Om Namah Shivaya for a few minutes and then sit in that stillness. Bow to the infinite, the divine, within all. Om Namah Shivaya. You use the little I am maker to shift. You know, I am the infinite. I'm Shiva. I'm Shakti. I'm beyond names, beyond form. Chidananda Rupa, Shivaham, Shivaham, and consciousness and bliss. I am the auspicious one. I am the auspicious one. Shivaham, Shivaham. Rest in that awareness. Dissolve all thoughts in that. And I, the infinite. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. And we end with this prayer, that may all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. Mantra. It holds it all. Mantra. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Kalima. Aham. Hamsa. Oh, the throb of the infinite. Mantra is a form. It's a limited form when it's a sound form, a thought form. But its boundless essence is there, fully awake. Your limited form, a contracted form, your essence is fully present, fully awake. So it begins to vibrate, become re-energized. By mantra, by the throb of mantra. So keep the mind wrapped in mantra, like being enveloped in a protective blanket. Walk through the world enveloped in mantra. That which protects, so mantra means, protects the mind from ignorance and delusion, our own as well as others. So, foundational practice. I want to thank you all for coming this evening and bringing your divine presence, bringing your commitment to practice, for being ones who do practices and then walk that wisdom into the world, your everyday life. It's so desperately needed. Every place, everybody is, needs that light, needs that flame, needs that love, needs that consciousness, needs that living presence as known. So thank you for being carriers of that into this troubled world. And I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks.